Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Beyond the Click, the Essential Email Metrics that Drive User Engagement. I am Jen Lacey, and I'll be your moderator. In today's webinar, we'll explore how Zillow's approach to email has helped them scale and grow user engagement, and you'll walk away with tactics to improve deliverability and user engagement in your own email programs. Before we get started, there are just a few housekeeping items we'd like to cover. We'll be taking questions both in the GoToWebinar chat box as well as on Twitter, so use the hashtag emailpros to join the conversation there. Welcome to Beyond the Click, the essential email metrics that drive user engagement, presented by SparkPost and Iterable, featuring Zillow. Today we're joined by three great speakers. First, we have Jamie Plankenhorn, Senior Manager of Email Marketing at Zillow. In her role, Jamie collaborates with a dynamic group of marketers, writers, product engineers, and analysts to continually drive Zillow's B2C email program forward toward one-to-one personalization at scale. Second, we have Norm DeValier, Technical Account Manager at SparkPost. Norm uses his 15 years of experience in the email industry to help SparkPost customers get up and running successfully. And last but not least, we have Alyssa Jarrett, Content Marketing Manager at Iterable. With an in-depth knowledge of SaaS, big data, database technology, and more, Alyssa specializes in translating high tech to the enterprise. So thanks to all three of you for taking the time to talk email metrics today. With that, let's get started. Take it away, Jamie.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I'm super excited to be here with you and Norm and Alyssa and to share some of our Zillow story and how we approach email. Just some background on me, I've been at Zillow for about 4 years, and this is the amazing team that I have the privilege of working with every day. So I get to talk to you today, but I certainly don't do this alone. We have 7 dynamic and phenomenal marketers that all work together to make our program really great. So one of the ways that we approach email at Zillow is I kind of think about it as a swivel chair. So we have things that we own, things that we partner, and things that we can affect. So things that we can own, the content marketing, lifecycle marketing that we'll be talking about today, B2B marketing, testing, which we'll talk a little bit more about later in the presentation, our different tools. We partner with our re-engagement team who works really closely with SparkPost, which is awesome that we have these development dev lead partners in our email marketing kind of ecosphere. And then we also work with our other Zillow group brands. So Zillow is one brand of a family of brands. So we get to collaborate with a bunch of other email marketers to kind of learn best practices and what's working for them and what's working for us, and kind of share across the board. So there's some other things that we own, partner, affect, but that's really how we approach things at Zillow. So if you have engaged with Zillow, chances are you have seen one or more of these emails. So these are our operational emails. We consider them the foundation of our email program. They have strong, steady engagement. They are sent out of SparkPost and managed by our re-engagement team. And so as we approach these specific emails, because they have such strong, steady engagement, we really look for small ways to improve the personalization or different opportunities to create new touch points. So we often will see emails out in the wild, or a brand partner will come up with a new email and we think, what is the Zillow version of this? So we are not a retailer, so we don't have an abandoned cart series or email. Is there a Zillow-ish version of an abandoned cart? We've been kicking around the idea for a while. We think we might have something, and we're working on putting it in production. So it doesn't have to be like it's explicitly something that everybody else is doing, but what is your company's version of that? And then the other type of emails that we have are curated content and tools. So this is a mix of content from Porchlight, which is our blog. We have a bunch of different guides, so guides for selling a home, buying a home, renting. We have DIY guides, all sorts of different really great content. And these are surprise and delight emails. We've got Mansion Madness, which is sent in March and is a bracket style tournament of mansions from around the country. Some beautiful fairy tale homes, just kind of a mix of beautiful things to look at, inspiration, tips, tools. And these are sent at a very high level of personalization. So sometimes we just have an email address. Sometimes we have a couple more data points on somebody. And so we're trying to get as personalized as possible with the information that we have. So if we can tell that you're a renter, we'll segment you into a renter bucket. If we can tell that you're a homeowner, we might segment you in a homeowner bucket. But that's really this level. It's personalization at a batch level. Nothing too deep in personalization, and doesn't really speak to the specific stage of the home shopping, buying, renting, selling process that you might be in. But we knew that to continue to make our program grow, we needed to do something different. And this is where Iterable came in for us. We used workflows. This is an example of one of our workflows that we have with Iterable. We used workflows to create a series of emails or a nurture campaign that would trigger off of two data points, a data point in time and a data point that indicated that someone was interested in shopping for a home. And that's where we saw that engagement that was promoted in the webinar and in the white paper. If you haven't read the white paper, 161% lift in open and an 18% lift in engagement is pretty phenomenal. And I think sometimes we get so hung up on creating the most perfect version, like, oh, I have to have 3 or 5 personalized data points, or I have to make the most personalized version. And this was really triggered off of 2 data points, one in time and one in engagement. And we saw that sort of lift. So I think sometimes it's important to get out of that picture perfect mindset and just be scrappy and try testing and try new things, and then iterate from there. Add more personalization, add engagement off of a click in an email to turn your drip into a nurture campaign or something like that. But just that is where we have seen the most, that's where we saw the engagement increases, just by being able to pivot off of a few data points that we already had access to. So the tool has really helped us grow our program.
So I just want to jump in here. Hi, my name's Alyssa, and I'm the content marketing manager at Iterable. I've been working with Jamie and her team at Zillow to really tell the Zillow email marketing story. And one of the things we talk a lot about is user engagement. To us, user engagement is so much more than acquisition, and so much more important than acquisition. It's not necessarily about getting that email address, although that is its own challenge, and that could be a topic of a completely different webinar. But for us, once you have that email address, then the question becomes, how are you going to get the most potential out of that customer or out of that user or subscriber or whatever your business model may be? How are you going to maintain them for the long term and really get that lifetime value to increase? Because a user or a subscriber is essentially worthless if they're just going to churn after a few days or weeks or months. And we really want to encourage all email marketers to really care about user engagement. We really believe that this is the key to growth marketing. And we feel like this phrase has sort of come in vogue. It's not growth hacking. This is not some kitschy startup tactic to get as many users as possible, regardless of the quality. It's really about having that right mindset. And when I mention a growth mindset, we're really talking about, the psychology research that came out of Stanford about a decade ago. A professor called Carol Dweck had talked about the growth mindset and how it applies to business. and compared it to what was known as a fixed mindset. So if you have a fixed mindset, you believe that you can only learn a finite set of things. Everybody is not, everybody is the same. The people don't change, and there's really limitations to how much you can grow. And that's not the case with growth marketers here at Zillow or Iterable or SparkPost or anywhere else in the modern marketing world. The growth marketing mindset is all about the fact that your customers' preferences, their lifetime value, their behaviors, they're not set in stone. They're going to vary over time. And so, it's not about creating one email marketing campaign and calling it a day. You really have to iterate over time to optimize your results and boost your ROI. And so when we talk about user engagement, there's essentially 3 common goals depending on your corporation's business model. The first is e-commerce, which is very popular. And this is, of course, you want to engage your users in order to make repeat purchases and also to upsell those purchases. So making sure that they're buying things at higher price points. So this is, similar to all of the e-commerce, giants that you see today. But it can also come with, varied sets of tactics and sets of metrics. The other goals that we see are revolving around subscription services. And this is something that we commonly see with clients at Iterable. Their major goal is preventing churn. So they already have a customer. They even have a way to monetize that customer for the long term. And now it's about making sure that they don't drop off. How are you going to keep them interested, whether it's an application or a digital subscription, or if it's an actual physical subscription box or a delivery service that they receive regularly. And then the final goal when it comes to user engagement, we see with publishers or people in the content space, newspapers, websites, blogs, anyone that may have a different monetization strategy, such as advertising, and they don't necessarily revolve around physical products. Their goals when it comes to user engagement are, how do I get my users or subscribers to view my content regularly? How do I keep them coming back to my website? How do I keep them reading my newsletter? And so these are all different goals, but the goal as a whole is, how do I keep them coming back for more? How do I gamify? How do I make the engagement last, for years and years to come? And so recently we developed a white paper with SparkPost that really goes into the metrics when it comes to user engagement. And for email marketers, these are not going to be new or surprising. I'm sure you've seen them at many different points in your career. But whether you are a seasoned email marketer, or you're just starting out, or you're working with clients at an agency, or you're doing consulting work, it doesn't hurt to go back to the basics. And I just wanted to walk you through some of the benchmarks that we've seen with SparkPost and sort of talk to you about some of the things that you can do to make sure you're improving your user engagement to the best of your ability. So the first we have is open rate. Now, obviously, open rate is going to depend on what the definition of open is, and Norm can talk about that when he talks about deliverability. But typically, this is when an email image is downloaded and you have that pixel coming in that recognizes an open. Obviously, you're going to see in the first column, we have bulk marketing emails, and then the second, we have transactional emails. And typically speaking, transactional emails are going to see higher open rates and higher metrics across the board. But typically, certain industries might see higher opens. We notice travel companies or nonprofits typically see higher opens and higher click-through rates. But for the most part, if you're seeing less than 1 in 5 emails opened, that's really a recipe for low engagement, and you're going to want to determine whether that might be a deliverability issue or if you're really not reaching the right people. The next is click-through rate, and the click-through rate, of course, is not necessarily the best way to determine engagement, considering that it's not reflective of the open rate itself. So that's why it's definitely lower than the click-to-open rate. We feel that click-to-open is a more meaningful way to assess your content engagement, because they're the ones that's the metric that tracks the people who actually clicked into your email and also interacted with it in some way. And so we can see upwards to 40%, even and even higher if you're doing a phenomenal job there. And then lastly, we have unsubscribe rate. Now, we have heard all of the complaints about unsubscribes from email marketers, and a lot of people are afraid of unsubscribes. They see it as a terrible, terrible thing that must be prevented at all costs. And we don't necessarily see that here. And I think the SparkPost team would agree with me that, unsubscribes can be seen as a sort of tough love. It's not the end of the world. And for the most part, it can be a way for you to get important feedback about the quality of your list. And you should want to have a very solid list of subscribers that is going to engage with you for the long term. And if you're not for them, you're not for them. It should be relatively low. So we make sure that we're not, we're following canned spam laws, and we're making sure that we are, abiding by the the regulations set by government agencies and with your ISPs. But for the most part, don't necessarily fear unsubscribes, because we feel like that is going to get you a better qualified list in the long term, and that will definitely boost your user engagement. Jamie, have you seen this similar case at Zillow?
Yeah, absolutely. You made a really good point, is that the unsubscribe rate can sometimes be seen as like tough love. And we definitely see that with some of our curated content and tools emails that are not as personalized and sent out to a wider audience. When that content does not resonate with the audience, we definitely see a spike in unsubscribes, and then we all apologize. We sit in meetings and go, oh, we're so sorry, we didn't mean to, we'll do better next time. And we continue to learn from that unsubscribe and say, okay, what was it about this email that didn't meet the expectations of the opener that caused that unsubscribe? So it can be a learning tool. Also, unsubscribe is healthy, right? You want people to get off your list if they don't want to be on it. I always say around here that I don't want to talk to people that don't want to talk to me, and that is true in my life and in email marketing. It is sad to see them go, but ultimately, if you get those people off your list that aren't engaging with your email anymore, you're going to see your open rates and your click-through rates and your click-to-open rates increase. And that's what you want, right? For deliverability purposes, for just overall engagement and health, you want those numbers to be good and strong. You can do this, we do it by with a re-engagement campaign. So we did some testing to see when we were most likely to re-engage somebody, and when kind of was the point of no return for our email subscribers. And then instituted just a monthly, it doesn't have to be daily, it doesn't have to be a big thing, one time a month re-engagement campaign that is sent out, and then people who don't re-engage, we just clean them off, clean them out of the list. And that doesn't mean that they're gone forever. It just means that right now they're not going to be receiving marketing emails from us, and that's a good thing. It's a healthy thing. And then when people are ready to start shopping again, or maybe renting, their lease is coming up and they're starting to engage with the site again, then they might re-engage themselves just on the site, and we would see that subscription come back. So don't be afraid of the unsubscribe. The other thing that I think, before we go on, the other thing that I think is really great about the different email lists. So you saw bulk rates and transactional rates. One of the things that we also say around here is that when people ask us what a good open rate or a good click rate is, and I'm sure many email marketers on the call have had this question before, I always say it depends. And I feel like my colleagues at Zillow feel like I am just trying to avoid answering their question, which is not it at all, because each list responds so differently to email based on if it's B2B or B2C, the timing of the email, the content. Like Alyssa said, nonprofits or travel agencies might see an increase in engagement that another company a retail company might not see that same level of engagement. So my best whenever we launch a new email, my words of advice for our team is always just start sending, see what your baseline is, and then try to increase your baseline, and then start basing what is quote unquote good versus what is not quote unquote not as good off of that baseline, and not some metrics that might really not apply to your list.
Hi. Sorry about that. Hi. Thanks, Jamie. I thought I'd like kind of give a basic overview of what deliverability is and how essentially what is deliverability versus delivery or delivering, right? So for any people who are new to email or on the call, this word deliverability was essentially invented to cover how well you're delivering your mail, but to the inbox. But basically, are you getting the message in front of your customers or not? So to kind of promote that, we take a few steps to sort of set up the environment for sending mail. But it's like like Jamie was saying, if people don't want to talk to you, you don't want to talk to them. Well, in a way, that the same kind of thing is going on between mail servers in terms of deliverability, right? So, so sort of a fundamental thing, if I'm setting up a server to send mail to someone, I need to essentially prove to them that I am who I am, right? If it's like mail's coming from, my domain or another domain I'm sending mail for, and do I have the right to send for that? So that's kind of incorporated in the whole idea of authentication. And if you want to do some Googling and research, if you don't already know about things like DKIM and SPF, then those are the kinds of things that are used to do that. So at SparkPost, we're fairly automated about how we set all this up. We always set up authentication for any domain we're sending mail for. So like for Zillow.com, we have DKIM and SPF set up, and it's fairly straightforward. So that's sort of like kind of in essence proving who you are so that people can talk to you or are willing to listen to you, and then kind of part of that is, well, like being a good conversation partner, right? So, well, we all have some kind of rules about who we like to talk to or not talk to based on how they behave, I guess. But in email, one of the fundamentals is, so if people are complaining about your mail or your mail's bouncing, right? Like you're sending mail to non-existent addresses, which is, a super serious no-no. All that has to be kind of incorporated in the data that, you use to decide who you send to next, right? So you don't want to send to people who complained. You don't want to send to people who bounced, not because it bothers them particularly, but it definitely bothers the ISPs. The ISP, in other words, the receiving mail server, like yahoo.com, they don't want to see me go through lists of thousands of addresses that don't exist. They figure, hey, spammer, right? So, and so then, that kind of information goes back to like managing the list, which is more the responsibility of the sender than it is the platform per se. So assuming you've got all those things in place, it doesn't just kind of totally take care of itself. So, part of what we do at SparkPost, part of it's automated, part of it's human. We monitor things like open rates, but definitely whether our mail is getting accepted, which means we're delivering mail to the ISP we're trying to reach. And then we essentially review what's been going on and alert the customer, like if Zillow suddenly saw the spam complaints going way up on something, that would be something we would jump on immediately and kind of like dig down to see what's going on. So it's a matter of just kind of like monitoring everything, reviewing what you're getting to see if it's performing the way you expect. I mean, different rates could change for different reasons, and then you act on it, either by changing your aspects about the list you're mailing to, or sending time, or volume, ramping up. Anyway, there's a lot of things to talk about there, but basically you look at what's going on, figure out what to do about it. So just kind of a little bit of a overview of what some of the metrics we like to look at. So deliverability or delivery, I'll talk about a little bit further, but essentially that's how much of your mail is actually getting into is getting delivered, is being accepted by the receiving mail server. Hard bounce, I mentioned briefly. So I mean, there are different ways you could be sending mail that you'll end up having a hard bounce rate, and depending on what that mail stream is actually taking care of, then it having a bounce rate is not necessarily always a bad thing. In the example of something like a welcome program, where you may be when you're sending the first message to a new user who signed up, and they may have fat fingered their address, so it's natural enough that would bounce. Soft bounces typically be cases where you're maybe sending a high volume to a domain that in essence wants you to slow down a little bit, and then and latency is just essentially the amount of time it takes to deliver your message. So if you're sending transactional mail, you want to do what you can to ensure that it's getting delivered in a matter of seconds, hopefully. But getting back to the deliverability bit, so I've seen instances where we had what amounted to close to 100% delivery of messages to ISPs, but there are some other factors, other metrics that made us want to take a good hard look at it, particularly like open rate. I think Jamie has some experience with that.
So when we were migrating, from our previous ESP to Iterable, we were going through some IP warm-up, and IP warm-up in and of itself has a lot of challenges, and changing ESPs also has a lot of challenges. Totally worth the effort. At least in our case, it has been 100% worth the effort, but you just need to kind of go into it knowing that things are going to shift and change. And one of the things that we saw with our migration was that deliverability was great. We were looking really, really solid on deliverability, but all of a sudden our open rate fell off like half. It was half of what we were used to seeing. And we were like, that is strange. So we started digging in. Is there a difference in the way the two ESPs were tracking opens? Is it our list? Did something happen with our list? Is it a deliverability issue? Even though it's saying that our reports are all saying that we have really great high thumbs up deliverability, what is happening? Or did people just really not like this email? And so what we ultimately had to do is kind of keep tabs on it, right? All of a sudden our email numbers drop off. Is it a blip? Is it a fluke? Is it an ongoing thing? And what we learned through Iterable's awesome reporting tool is that we were able to see deliverability and open and click and engagement rates at the domain level. And so when we drilled down at the domain level, what we saw was that while Gmail was saying thumbs up, almost 100% deliverability, you guys are awesome, they were trashing it somewhere in between, saying, yes, we accept your mail, and actually getting it into the inbox. And just because Gmail had decided that our emails weren't getting into the inbox, that was pulling our overall open rate down. So it wasn't a problem across the board. It was just a problem with Gmail. And so we worked with Iterable and SparkPost to solve for that deliverability problem. And ultimately, once we got our emails back in Gmail's inbox, our open rates bounced right back up to where we were used to seeing them, and everything was good. So deliverability, while you'll see that deliverability number, it really doesn't tell the whole story. You have to look at everything. So you look at deliverability and open and click or CTOR, click to open, and unsub. You kind of have to look at soup to nuts, beginning to end, what your data is telling you, and then move on from there. So the click only tells part of the story, like the webinar says, beyond the click. Deliverability only tells part of the story. You really have to look at the whole big picture to truly understand what's going on with your list. So we have some ideas at Zillow on how to keep growing. So we've talked about the foundational elements of our program, those operational emails that we looked at earlier, and then we have the curated content and tools program that we send, and then our nurture and drip campaigns that we see that really phenomenal engagement with. But that's not the end of the road for us, right? We want to keep growing, and we want to keep pushing the envelope and testing and learning about how our audience will react with new and different approaches. So we have these kind of, I call them mantras. These are things that we keep in mind as we approach our day-to-day on the team at Zillow. And so I can just kind of add some color to all of them. So be engineerish. So this for us is kind of multiple fold, right? We sit next to our re-engagement engineers. So we collaborate very closely with them. I know sometimes engineering or development and marketing are on different floors, but we're trying a truly integrated approach. So we sit right with them. And also it's about picking tools that empower you to think like an engineer, or maybe to step a little bit outside of your skill level, or level up your skills as a marketer to be able to get that next level of email engagement, like Iterable does with their workflow tool. So thoughtful personalization. So this is beyond the like name and an image or things like that. This is, which is great. One of my favorite emails, I don't know if you guys ever saw it, was the Starbucks one where they wrote your name on the cup. Shout out to whoever thought of that and executed it, because it was amazing. It was a couple of years ago. So that there is a time and a place for that kind of personalization, but the thoughtful personalization that I am specifically talking about is the combination of time and site engagement, or data points that you have to really create that right user or right message for the right user at the right time. The way we kind of have thought about dovetailing our curated content and tools emails with our foundational emails to create an overarching experience. Get more visits out of less volume. So this goes back to keeping your list healthy and re-engaged. Don't be thoughtful in sending not just tons of email to say you're sending tons of email, but make those emails do as much work for you as possible. So send less volume, but make them super engaging, so you get a lot of visits and eyeballs back to your site from a smaller amount of sends. Be scrappy. So WYOE, write your own email. Much to the chagrin, I'm sure, of our content team, and probably sometimes our design team, we take matters into our own hand to keep the ball rolling, and might write a first draft of an email, or take a stab at creating a hero image for an email, and then look for feedback and ways to learn, but just to keep that ball rolling. So don't be afraid to like step outside of like your specific role, and try new things, just to keep that momentum going and keep that energy flowing through your email program. create once, publish everywhere. So one of the things that we like to do is when we have new content or if a new product or tool comes onto the site, we look at all the different places that it might fit and apply to our different email programs and put it in multiple places, writing one piece of content, but then plugging it in to different campaigns as it makes sense. So a tool about homeownership might go in something specific for homeowners, but it might go in our general email, or maybe something for buyers as well. The caveat in that create once, publish everywhere is to kind of be thoughtful about where you're putting that one message and make sure that the same people aren't seeing that one message over and over again, but that you're actually leveraging that one message to multiple audiences. And then always be testing. So one of the things that Alyssa said earlier that I really liked is that you can't just set it and forget it. And that is one of the things that we have noticed here as well, is that our list or our subscribers will engage with different content over time. So once upon a time, a couple years ago, people would get super engaged with data-specific emails, and then all of a sudden they didn't anymore, which was just so bizarre, right? And then it was emails with big, beautiful pictures. We could get lots of engagement from images about mansions, multi-million-dollar mansions. And then all of a sudden that didn't work as well. So always being thoughtful and watching your metrics and understanding what people are engaging with at that time. And make sure that when you're testing things, you're actually learning from your tests and applying them to future sends. I have heard, and I'm sure anecdotally, that lots of people are like, oh, we subject line test every single email that we ever send out. Are you just testing, or are you to test, or are you learning and saying, okay, this time we tested spelling out numbers versus an actual numeral, and the actual numeral did better, so that's what we're going to use moving forward. And then we'll circle back to that test in 4 to 6 months and see if that's still the case, and move on to a different test. So as long as you're applying and doing discipline testing, you're always going to be learning and growing your program. And then last, don't be afraid of failure. So we have a saying just in general at Zillow is fail fast. Take big swings and try. I put failure in quotes on the slide very deliberately because failure is perceived, right? It's always a learning opportunity if you view it that way. So just see what you can take, what learnings you can take from anything that happens and apply them moving forward and continue to grow your program. So I think with these things in our back pocket, we're set up to continue to keep growing our email program and hopefully make it continue our success.
Awesome. Thank you, Jamie. So we've put together just a few high-level takeaways for everyone on this slide. They're all listed here. So the first one, engagement is only as good as your list. Second, you're only as good as the tools you use. And lastly, a click metric isn't indicative of one thing. It's a combination of many things, including tools, data, lists, and more. So now we have time to take just a few questions. As a reminder, you can either post them in the GoToWebinar chat, or you can reach out to us on Twitter and use the hashtag emailpros. So I have a couple that have come in. The first one I'm going to assume is for Alyssa, but whoever wants to jump in can. The question is, how can I use segmentation to increase engagement and deliverability?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it points back to something that Jamie said earlier in the webinar, how her team was struggling with deliverability at one point, and she learned through Iterable that they were at the domain level there was an issue. So I feel like segmentation can work both internally and externally for certain factors. So externally, of course, segmenting by the things that are happening with your users, what interactions they're taking with your website, when was the last time they made a purchase, are they engaging on a regular basis, or are they not, or do you need to re-engage them? And then there's the internal factors, like Jamie was mentioning. So we can, if you're noticing an issue, you can segment by email domain, and you can say, okay, all Gmail users are going to be segmented in this particular list temporarily, so we can see how they are interacting separately from the main list. And maybe we do that for 30 days until we can resolve the issue, and then we can sort of merge those lists back together if it's necessary in order to receive the updated metrics. So again, all end-user interactions are very prime for segmenting your list. And then, of course, don't forget those internal factors that could be affecting your deliverability.
Awesome. So I've got another one here. It's a little lengthy, and I'm going to let you guys jump in. So the question is, Zillow, like automotive sales, is selling a very considered expensive purchase, which does not reoccur often. How does Iterable's e-commerce, subscription, and publisher strategies fit into these much longer life cycles?
How was Iterable? How was Iterable or Zillow specifically?
Iterable.
Okay. Well, Jamie, why don't you speak to how it works at Zillow, and then I can jump in.
Yeah, you know, we try. We just keep trying to engage people during those off-peak cycles when they are happy in their rental and their lease isn't up for another 9 months, and they may or may not be engaging with the site regularly, or you know, in the downturn of after you've bought a home, you're probably not thinking about moving again because you're recovering from that moving experience that you just had. And so there are a couple of ways, right? So we try, for homeowners specifically, we try to target homeowners with useful information about making your home your own and DIY. For renters, how you can personalize without making the personalization permanent, so you might not be able to paint or other ways to decorate, or decorating in small spaces or things like that. And also what we have seen is that sometimes people, even though they might not actively be shopping or renting, is that they continue to engage with our emails because they're just interested in real estate overall. So we will see kind of a dip during those long periods, but we just keep trying new things. It's a combination of the surprise and delight, targeted marketing, our operational kind of foundational sends, and just continuing to try to see what resonates with people. So it's ongoing learning and testing to see what works, and trying to learn from other industries that have those long life cycles, like automotive, or I think I've been trying to talk to somebody in baseball or in sports where you have on seasons and off seasons, and how do they connect with people in the off season. Any sort of company or industry that has that like very specific on and very specific off is where we look for ideas and inspiration or connections.
Yeah, and at Iterable, we notice a lot of the same things. E-commerce and subscription services are some of our biggest industries that we represent, and we do notice a lot of similar tactics that you mentioned, Jamie. For example, one of the things that I'm working on with one of our customers, Creative Live, they focus on online classes. And the email marketing manager there, Silva, I was having a conversation with her about how she used to work at a meal delivery service, and we've worked with several of those companies as well. And she said the shift had changed from trying to make sure that people were repeating their purchases every week or even multiple times a day when it comes to food, and then going to a longer life cycle of online learning where you may only purchase a class every couple of months or maybe once a year. But I think, like you mentioned, that just because you may not be actively shopping for a home, you may be interested in real estate in general. I feel like Creative Live could probably echo that same sentiment of you may not be interested in attending a class at this moment, but you're interested in learning for the long haul, and you are interested in engaging your mind. And so they're going to be ready with re-engagement campaigns and upselling opportunities throughout your life cycle. And that's the great part about working with these clients, is that you determine the user interactions that are most valuable to them, and then find ways to incorporate them into really hyper-personalized emails and campaigns.
Awesome. This next question I'm going to assume is for Norm. So Norm, the person asks, how can I increase deliverability? I manage my own dedicated server with MTAs, DKIM, SPF records, etc., but I'm finding that most of my list never opens the email. What should I do?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I mean, so I think you know, my first thing I check is just sort of how are you confirming the percentage of opens that you're getting or not. Now, you know, there are kind of different ways to do that. I mean, like Alyssa explained, typically opens are, it's a matter of downloading a certain image. So all the people who are reading their email using using methods that don't automatically open images. I mean, you know, in other words, what I'm saying is your open rate could be higher than you know about. It's just a matter of determining whether or not that's the case. But you know, generally, I think following the steps that Jamie described here is the best way to do it. Is you send mail to people who want your mail, then they open it. You know, if you're sending mail and you're not getting opens because everything's going into the spam folder, then there's probably something you could look at that would give you an indication about why that's happening. But if SPF and DKIM pass consistently, then it's really, you know, ISPs like Gmail, the one thing they care about the most is like what your users are doing with the mail when they get it. So, you know, in terms of like a low open rate because your mail was going to the spam folder, that's kind of the thing to look at. If you've recently changed the domain you're sending from, or if you recently changed the IP addresses you're sending from, then you might be faced with what essentially is like a ramp up period that you should, you know, follow. But we have a few docs and if you go to support.sparkpost.com, we have some docs in there about, you know, managing engagement. So
Norm, is it a reasonable expectation then that the larger the campaign, the lower the engagement tends to be?
Well, not necessarily, but yeah, you definitely see higher engagement with smaller campaigns that are, you know, aimed, or not necessarily in terms of the number of recipients always, but, you know, in essence, campaigns that are aimed at, you know, more specific interest as opposed to, you know, general. I mean, like, yeah, I mean, it's, you know, yeah, I mean, you could have a very large campaign with a very large open rate, but you know, it kind of falls in with that bulk mailing bucket that you'd have a lower engagement. So anyway, hope that helps.
Thanks. And then one more, I'm going to kick this over to Jamie probably. The question is, where do you find inspiration for your programs?
All over. That's a great question. So it depends on what kind of email we're looking at. Spotify and Pandora have really fantastic personalized emails that they send about how many songs you listen to or what your most favorite popular song was for the month or the year, things like that. Alaska Airlines did a really phenomenal personalized year in review email in, oh gosh, in December maybe or January. So that sort of fun surprise and delight email we find inspiration from. I'm in a group called Women of Email on Facebook, which I get inspiration from how they approach things and business strategies and think about things. Emails in our inbox, I love Nordstrom and Litmus, and Iterable does really great work on their blog. SparkPost has interesting articles about deliverability. just really everywhere. It all goes back to that kind of like, what is the Zillow version of this? So whenever we see something, fun play on a graphic, or a thoughtful way of personalization, like how could we bring this to our subscribers too? So it's not industry specific, it's not type of email specific, it's wherever you can find it.
Great, and I've actually got one more quick follow-up question for Norm. They're asking, what is the average ramp-up period for a new domain or IP?
I frequently get someone up and running in 30 days. That's, you know, that certainly can happen. And we've had, especially if you're moving from one ESP to another, then it might take a little bit longer than that. But 30 days is what I shoot for.
Great. All right, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up here. So I just want to say thank you again to all three of our speakers. All registrants will be getting a copy of the slides via email as a follow-up, and also a link to the recorded webcast within 24 hours of the webinar. So thank you all again for your time, and we hope you have a great day.